Okay. Welcome, everybody. So, our last session was kind of intro to Google, and this is leveraging Google. Gee, a little different. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take a little bit of a conceptual approach to Google. And in particular look a little deeper at its collaborative tools and why they make a difference. So some of what I'm going to show you is going to be just slides to kind of explain the concept, and then we're actually going to look at Google Docs. Everything I'm saying applies to other aspects. You could use it in sheets and slides. And then if we have time after that, I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into Google Forms. So how does that sound? Is that okay with everyone? So I know you're allowed to say yes. That sounds good. Okay. All right. So let's take a look just conceptually. Obviously, everybody knows how to use the chat box at this point. All right. So here's a hypothetical. Okay. So, and this is in the old, this is before Google. Okay, if you were working with Microsoft. So if you were working on a proposal and you had three people, and I've been in this position, whenever I've had to work on an RFP or a proposal, one of the first thing you realize is you can't really have everybody writing at the same time. You usually have a lead writer, and whoever's the lead writer will take a first stab at a draft, and then they might share it with everyone else. And then they get feedback, and they kind of try to fold the feedback in. That's a common way that people collaborate. So I'm creating a little hypothetical. It's quite realistic, okay? So if I were working on a draft proposal of something, whatever it happens to be, and then I had three people that I'm part of a team with, and I emailed it to them, and they all sent me back their edits, how many documents would there be at this point? This is make you do a little math. How many documents would there be now? Exactly. There are 4 documents. So at that point, I've got to try to integrate everybody's ideas. Maybe I'll take some of them. So let's say I integrate everybody's ideas and I update them and I push it out again to them. And they again give me feedback. How many documents are there now? And I won't include my first one because that one I updated, okay? Well, yeah, it's 2 documents actually. All right? So how many would I have now? Another what? 3? And then if I do this a couple of times, how many versions of this document are going to be floating around by the time this is finished? Even if I get rid of some of them. Okay? A lot, right? And that was the typical model with the way you worked. And it really used to terrify me because I was really trying to be careful about numbering each version. I always dated them. And then if there were 3 drafts in a day, I'd have A, B, C. Because my biggest terror was that I was going to forget which version. I was going to pick the wrong version to edit, or maybe, not get all the edits. So how many of you can relate to what I'm talking about? Does that make sense? Okay? So Google changes all of that. And again, that's weird. Hold on. Somebody's getting blocked out. Hold on one second. Yeah, I had somebody who was having trouble getting in, so I'm going to unlock the meeting and see if that helps. Okay, so let me see if I can get my train of thought back again. So my point is Google changes all of that. And one of the interesting ways it changes it, because the documents are in the cloud, okay, nobody actually has a file. Even I don't have a file. Every document that we have that we think of as a Google file is actually a link to the document that is in the cloud. So I don't need to have 5 versions of the document in order to collaborate. And so all of these kinds of issues get eliminated. Now, in the beginning, it takes some time for people to wrap their brain around that. It's, my old joke used to be, people really freak out when they don't see a save and save as. So they try to work around it by making copies, but it's really not necessary if you really understand how Google works. So we're gonna look at that a little bit, okay? And it really begins with this whole issue of sharing and how you share a document, okay? So there are 2 things you can actually do. One is you can share a document, and I'm going to go over all the choices there and give you a little bit deeper dive into what each thing means, and including answering some questions that came up last time about can I make a copy, can't I, and under what circumstances, okay? And then also that we have an ability to share folders. So if there's a whole series of documents that we want people to have access to, now you still have to give them editability if you want them to change it, but you can share a folder as well, okay? And that may be helpful, and I'll show you how to do that, okay? So let me stop. Any questions so far? So let's first talk about the sharing itself. As I said, I'm going to go back and forth between looking at the slides and then showing you some details. And I thought a good thing to do it in would be docs. I mean, we could have done any of the applications, but I think this tends to be more commonly seen in docs. Okay? So I just happen to have a little a little fake team meeting agenda or action items. Okay, so let's start with sharing. Okay, so I have a few options in terms of sharing a document. There are really 3, and I already shared with myself, but I can show you the 3, and you probably have seen them. So it's view, editor, commenter, and then make owner, which I'll talk about after, okay? So let's talk about them from the highest level down. So the highest level is editor. So if somebody has an editor, they basically have all of the privileges that I have, including, by the way, accepting changes. So if I have a number of collaborators and one of them is an editor, they can actually accept the change that someone else has put in, okay? So my first bit of advice, don't make too many people the editors. I think there's a tendency, if we have a team, to make everyone an editor, and as I'm going to show you, that may not be necessary or even desirable. So normally you're going to want to be the editor. It might be you and your boss, or if you're really working side by side with somebody on something, you might pick them. But normally you don't really want to have people be an editor, okay? Because they can even invite other people, although that is one of the settings you can change. So, for example, in your settings, you can have it so editors are not able to change the permissions or the share of anyone else. They have editing privileges, but they can't control anyone else. They can't take someone out. They can't share the document with anyone else as an editor. Because remember, editors pretty much have most of the power of the owner, okay? But you can limit it a little bit here. And there was another thing about viewers. I'll get to that later when I get to viewers, okay? So there's editor. The second is commenter. Now, I think where a lot of people get a little confused here is they think that all you can do as a commenter is comment, and that's actually incorrect. You can, in addition to making comments, and I'm going to change this. I'm actually going to, okay. I didn't mean to do it. It doesn't matter anyway. We're just describing it. And I really can't change who I am anyway, because I'm the owner, okay? So it would only be for my alter ego self, okay? So there's actually 3 different levels in the document itself. So there is editing, and there is suggesting, and there's viewing. So a commenter cannot edit, but they can suggest. So even though by the way, an editor can suggest as well. So I'm just going to show you what suggest looks like. So let's say I don't like the word create. So I want to use it and say develop. So what it does is it puts a comment in. Well, here's the problem. I accepted it because, I'm trying to play both roles here, okay? So let's say, and I won't do it this time. So let's say it had the word develop, and I'm a commenter. I might say instead use the word create. So the way it's going to look for the editor is they're going to get something that looks like this. So the person actually went into the document and it struck through what I wanted to take out, and then it made a suggestion. But it didn't just allow the person to edit it. I, as the owner or the editor, one of the editors, would have to what? Approve this. Now, if you have 2 people as editors and 2 as commenters, either editor can approve. That's the reason why you don't want to have a lot of editors. So you want to really pretty much make yourself an editor and make the rest of your collaborators commenters, okay? And then at that point, if I think, yeah, that's a good one, well, let's say I don't like it, okay? So if I don't like it, as me, I can get rid of it and it just disappears. No, I think you're wrong about that. On the other hand, if I liked it, and I said, okay, I liked it, then I could approve it, and then it would update it and correct it, okay? And again, I'm switching between being editor and being the suggester, okay? So even if somebody, by the way, is a co-editor, they could choose, maybe they don't want to mess with they just want to make a suggestion, they can also choose suggesting. So a commenter cannot edit but they can suggest. An editor can edit or suggest. So I know I'm probably making your head explode a little bit there, but does that make sense to everyone? So in most cases, you don't want to make someone an editor. In most cases. Now, maybe I don't even want to mess with your document. By the way, typically, if you had sent a copy of the document to folks, there are some people that would mark it up. Other people would just prefer to write you an email and say, I think, this is redundant or whatever, and not actually tamper with even the draft you sent them. So, but you don't have to do that. There would be no reason to send an email. If I were a commenter, I can make a comment. So I could have also done, and again, I could have highlighted the word, and I could have gone in here and just said, and I would put that in the document. So I don't know why that did not highlight. It should. Maybe you have to pull these up. So now that would then generate an item, and then if I liked it, I could either delete it or not. Okay, and again, some of this is tricky because I'm trying to play both roles here. so it doesn't quite know what I'm doing here. Okay? But if you were assuming it was a second person, I would be able to then at that point decide, and I would make the edit. So there's some, just by changing it. So any questions on that? So commenters can comment or they can suggest, but they cannot edit without your permission. So can you see why that would be a better approach in most cases? Too many cooks? Now, we're going to, again, getting to the conceptual piece of this. So there are two ways that we can edit a document. And I hate these because they're big words, but, So one is, oops, not what I wanted to do. Just going to make it bigger. Okay? So you can either synchronous or asynchronous. Anybody know what those are? What the difference is? They're big fancy words. You hear it a lot in online meetings too. Asynchronous and synchronous. Anyone know? And gutsy enough to take a stab? Okay. All right. So I'm not getting an answer, so I guess I got to answer it. All right. So synchronous means we're editing the document in real time. Now, you can actually have, in theory, you could have somebody suggesting in real time too. But typically what you have is people where it's multiple editors will be synchronous, okay? And I can actually show you what that looks like, sort of, okay? And the reason I can show you is that I have my iPad. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the document on my iPad. Now, what you're going to see is they're both going to say me because my name is the same. But I can go to the document, and wherever I decide to type on my iPad, if it lets me, I'm trying to get my keyboard to come up. There it goes. Okay. So I'm actually making these changes on my iPad. And notice you see my name. So if I was collaborating with someone else, you would actually see their name. So if I go to my keyboard, they're both going to be me. You can see where my cursor is, and you can see where the other person's cursor is. And we could actually be working simultaneously. I'm working on the bottom, you're working on the top at the same time. I haven't figured out how to type on two devices at the same time. So this would be synchronous. We're literally working on, it's almost like a dual car. We're working on the device together. So you put that in, I take it out, And this has been really good in some cases. In the absence of doing this, I'll give you an idea of some of the stuff that's happened as you know, I work in Microsoft too. So I worked on this draft proposal with a friend of mine, and his wife is really great at editing. So we got on the phone, and he's trying to help me, to do the edits. And initially, we just did it over the phone, and it wasn't working out too well because I was missing some of them. So what I actually did was to set up Join Me, and so that he could see the document, and then I'm changing, and he's telling me, Jeff, no, that has to be capitalized. But I'm still running everything. If we were in the Google environment, that would not have been necessary. I could have said, Ed, okay, let's go through them, and he could be making the changes. We could be agreeing on them. So that would be synchronous. So we were kind of doing synchronous, but not doing it really synchronous, okay? So I don't know how any of you feel about synchronous. Some people have mixed feelings about it. It can get a little crazy when you're trying to run everything at once. Actually, hold on. I lost my Join Me so I can see the commenters while I was on there. So how many of you would be a little leery of synchronous? Okay. But there are some times that it is good. I work with a company that does energy management, and they do their team meetings, and they don't need to use Zoom because they're a Google company, and so they don't work in Word. Well, typically what they would be reviewing is not in Word, it's in Google Sheets, but the same thing applies. But when they'll actually go through, what the deadlines are for everything, and it isn't unusual right there for, let's say, if the owner says, "What's the story with that? Do we have a confirmed date?" And the guy goes, another person goes, "Well, I haven't put that in yet." And he goes, "We'll put it in now," and he just puts it in. And we all can see it. So we actually don't need Zoom. Because if I had this document up, everybody would be able to see the document. I mean, we won't be able to see each other, but we could do it with a conference call, and one of us or a number of us could be adding stuff. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions on that? So now a more common way that people work. Well, one of the challenges, unfortunately, with Synchronous is, it's okay for in a team meeting or a final review phase, but a lot of times people don't have time to get together. The whole idea is, I'm going to do it when I have time, you're going to do it when you have time, So the more common way that people collaborate tends to be, asynchronous, which is I'll edit it when I have my opportunity. And that's where I think having the suggest is really helpful because, I may be doing it at 1 o'clock in the morning, you may be doing it at 9 a.m., but we each have an ability to manage the document together, okay? Now, let's say that we work on something, and you know what? The last hour has been a bust. We are really off base. And so I'm thinking, I'd like to really go back to like where we were, like yesterday. Now of course if I was saving copies it wouldn't be an issue. I'd probably just pull up an old version. But you don't have to worry about making a copy because Google updates every time you make a change. And so when I initially created this kind of fake document, I created it back on May 17th. So you can see the versions of it. Let's see, May 19th version of it. Okay? And then I can name those versions. So anytime you really want like a prior draft, like you're thinking, I'm not sure which way I want to go, you can actually rename them. So it'll call it May 19th. But, if I want to say, okay, I can do that. I can change the name. It'll still give me the date and time, but it'll also allow me to have a name for it. So you can name your versions. And then if I want, I can restore this version. And then that'll be the official version. But maybe I'm a little soft on this. I'm not sure yet. So I don't want to restore it. I want to save it. So I can then take that version and make a copy. And then it'll actually name it, same item, Jeff's edits. So now I really do, it's true, I created 2 documents, but I now have my original document where we were at on May 26th, assuming I didn't restore, and then I also have this other one that actually has the name that I added, Jeff's edits or whatever, and then maybe we will look at more than one version. So there's no reason to really make copies just for the sake of making copies. Does that make sense? Now, what they recently added, which is kind of cool, and actually I could do it with these. Maybe I will. We're going to experiment. I'm not sure what the results will be, but we'll give it a shot. Okay? So this is a recent development, or a recent add-on. I just unloaded it by accident. So under Tools, you have the ability to compare documents. So whatever document you're in, you have to select some other document. So I'm going to do a recent one. I'm going to select the copy of the team meeting. So now it's comparing these two versions, right? And it's going to ask, it always compares, it always takes whatever is the version you're opening up, and it compares the other to it. It's not just combining them. It's making a decision about which is the master document. So if the one that is your master document, is, let's say, the main one, that's the one you want to be in when you do the compare, because you'll get a different result, or it works a little differently if I had done it the other way around. If I had started with the copy and then was going to compare it to the original, we'll get a little bit of a difference, and you'll see what happens when I do the comparison. So now it's going to create a new document, a third one, okay, which it's going to call both of them. So see the big, long, crazy name? And what it's going to do is it's going to show, if you look at it, it's loading, okay? It's going to show all of the changes between the one document and the other and allow me to approve them. And that's why it's important which one you pick. Because if I had picked the new one, it would have been approving the ones in the first draft. So you have to decide what's your main one and what do you want to really compare it to. So at this point, if I want to, delete that space, I can just say delete space. So I can literally merge them so that it will be the same as the second document. Or I can say, no, that one I don't want. That one you can leave alone. That I'll take. This one I'll leave alone. That one I'll take. And then I have this combined document, then I can rename it. Okay, any questions on that? So that's a recent development, the ability to compare two drafts. Okay? Yes. Every couple of minutes when you hit a keystroke, it'll update it. Yes. And you can track all of your changes. So for example, here's our team meeting. It says, if you notice up top, it says last edit 9 minutes ago. Because I haven't done any typing in 9 minutes on this document. On the comparison one I did. So let's say I add a new item. Okay? Something I think we're going to be doing a lot. So now it just updated that change. And so if you now look at the documents, there was the current version, and then there's the updated of just what I just did. Okay? So this is before, and then this is the after that has the look into plexiglass. Okay? Question. Yep, you can make all three of them a main one. Absolutely. Now it'll give you a crazy name. It'll say and, but you can change that name. Absolutely. All right. So that's a new feature, the ability to compare. So if I had somebody that really just didn't like this whole edit, and they said, I just want my own draft to play with, you could, combine those. They don't have to work in this kind of traditional editing mode. They could actually even create their own document. Maybe take mine and then create another one. As long as I know the two names, that's been shared with me. All right? Any questions? That work? So now, this is where the leveraging comes in, because it really provides some nice capabilities. Okay. So you share, this is again is a hypothetical. Okay, so you share well, actually, you know what? Let's go back and look a little bit deeper at viewing and what you get when you're a viewer. Okay, so a viewer can only see the document. They cannot even see the comments. So a commenter can see the comments, but a viewer can only see the documents. So if we wrote in one of the comments, these people are idiots. We better simplify the language. I mean, we would probably, just for safety reasons, take it out. That cannot be seen by a viewer. They cannot change all of the versions or all of that stuff. They can only see the current version of the document. So for them, it's almost like a PDF. They can edit it and they can view it, but they cannot see any of the comment or back-end comments or any of that other stuff that we did. All right? Questions? And for some reason, my screen froze up. Let me try to go back in. I wonder if yours did. Okay. I don't know, because it could have been when yeah, no, it's updated now. Okay. All right. Questions? No questions? You're all good? All right. So let's look at what happens with viewers. And again, I'm going to change it back so I'm like more of an editor and I have a little more control over the document. Okay? All right. So when I share a document with someone and I make them a viewer, because this came up last time, if I leave it alone, they can make a copy of the document, they could print the document, they could share the document with somebody else. So they have a lot of control over, even though they can't edit the document, they have a lot of control over what they can do. So if I go into the selections and I go viewers and commenters can see the document, but they cannot download, print, and copy. Now, all of a sudden, they can view the document. They can't make a copy of it. They can't print it. They can't distribute it. I mean, I guess they could take a screen capture of it, but they really don't have a lot of control. So if you're sending stuff out, particularly as a view, you may want to limit that, okay? But that's completely up to you. You can make that choice. But there's more variable than just view. And so when someone asked me last week, if you have a shared document that's shared with you, can you make a copy of it? Can you print it? And I said, well, it depends on, what the owner did. Then, that's what I meant. Okay? If the owner has that checked, then yeah, you can print, you can copy, you can share. If they have it unchecked, I cannot even make a copy of the document. I can't even copy and paste the content. It won't let me do it. Okay? So it's pretty locked down. All right? So let's look at a little bit of a hypothetical. Again, by the way, are you with me? Any questions? I know this is a bit of a deep dive, but if we're really going to use Google and not try to, kind of use Google like it's Word, make a copy, make 6 copies, I think it's important to really understand how this works. Okay? So, let's assume that you're responsible for creating a school schedule. Happens all the time. People create a schedule. And as soon as they create it, they get 5 emails from people telling them that there was a slight error. The time was wrong here, or the number was wrong here, or something is misspelled. How many of you have had that happen to you? And tell me no, so I know you're alive. Has that happened to you? Okay. So what do if you're in Word? You make the edits, and you push out another version, right? And you can bet, almost predictable, 10 minutes after you push out a second version, someone else finds another error, and then you notice that. Now you push out a what? A third version. So you constantly have to, figure out, well, does everybody have the latest version of this thing? Okay? You don't have any of those issues in Google because people never have the file. All they have is a link. So you don't need to send another version if there's a small change, unless it's something that you really want to let people know it's changed. It was just a small change. You don't have to let them know anything, because if they haven't opened it yet, they wouldn't have seen it. And even if they'd opened it and seen it, by the time they look at it the second time, the change will have been made. So this whole, I'm sending you another version. Okay, here's the update. Wait, we have a few more. You don't have to do any of that. Don't have to do it. Okay? Because people never have the file. They only have a link. And it's a dynamic link, particularly with View. So you change the document, it's changed. Now, if I wanted to notify people, like maybe I had initially pushed as a draft, and I wanted to let them know that, the final one, I want to inform them so they can, take a look at it, well, then I can certainly, and we talked about this last time, but I'm reviewing, I can email collaborators and tell them, the final draft is ready for viewing, or the schedule is ready for viewing. And what that's going to do is, I don't want her to get this, it's going to then push an email out with a link to the document. So I can do this without even having to be involved with Gmail. If I've shared this with my teachers or a parent group, I can just email them through the document, which has an advantage because it's going to give them the link. Questions about that? By the way, you won't see email collaborators available if you haven't shared your document with at least one person. Okay. So let's say I had a schedule from last year, and I want to now do this year's schedule, so I'm going to update it, right? So what I might typically do if I was in Word is I would, do a save as and create a new schedule, and I'd be working on it for a while. And I could do that, but I don't necessarily even have to do that in Google. I could just start working on the updated schedule in last year's if I didn't need to keep it. And what I can always do is shut off sharing at any time. So if I'm in the middle of working on it and I don't want anyone getting confused and thinking this is it, I can just take them out as a viewer. Or if somebody stops working for the school, instead of, because they would still have access to their files, especially with everybody having remote and everything, they still have access to any of the files I had sent them. But if I eliminate them as a viewer, I just take them out, they can no longer access their documents. And since they never would have had it, even as an email attachment, they don't have it. Now, they might remember it, but they don't actually have a copy of it. And so I might just decide in the middle while I'm working on it, I'll take everybody out of view. And then if they have an old link, it won't work, because at that point they don't have access. And then as soon as I have it fixed up, then I can just, especially if I have them as a group, I can just enable a group again as view. And I can be granular about this. I could have me and the principal and the assistant principal can edit. I can have the staff yes, I would be. And that is true. I would be. But maybe I don't care about the old schedule. It's an old schedule. If you really want to keep it, you can make a copy and keep the old schedule. But maybe I don't really care. There are a lot of things we do. They're just dynamic, and I don't really need to keep a copy. Maybe a schedule I would, but, if we're talking about, like, lunch assignments or certain things, I don't really need to keep it. So, and we could certainly have a debate about whether you wanted to keep it or not. I'm just trying to point out that you don't have to. okay, there really would be no reason. You don't have to create 12 versions. By the way, you can always go, remember, you can always go into version history anyway. So if I changed it, and for some reason someone said, oh, what was the schedule from last year? I could still pull it up because it would have the old version, and then I could actually even name it. So here's an example. These are all the versions. If this were last year, I could just type in last year, and then go on my merry way, make the edits. And if somebody said, oh, I really need a copy of last year's for our records, I just go and make a copy. Because it remembers the version histories. Makes sense? So there's no such thing as overwriting a document. And I know it takes a while to get your brain around this, okay? But there is no overwriting because of the document history. All right? So when would you want to change owners? So when you would want to change owners, and I, in my line of work, I change owners. You might never change an owner. But here's an example. Let's say that I worked on some draft evaluation forms for employees working in the same energy management company. I didn't write their evaluations, but I developed the template and the metrics, for the owner to then fill them out. So in the process of where we were designing it, we were going back and editing. But when I finally finished it, I said, let me make you the owner. And by the way, at that point, if you want to take me off, you can. If you want to leave me on, you can. That's up to you. But not right now, I've got control of the document. I'm the one who can see it. I can decide who else wants to see it. And even though you have co-editing, you're really not the owner. It's really my document. But since I created it for you, I think it probably would make sense at this point if I just really transferred custody over to you. And then you're the one with full control. And then they might decide, I've done my job. I'm not sure I really want this consultant to see what we edited a year later. They can take me off. And they would not be able to do that if I didn't change owners. Does that make sense? I could think of some other examples of where I would internally change owners. If I were working in a department like a tech department or even a business office, and I developed a template for someone, I might decide at some point I don't want to, I'll keep a copy for myself in my records just so I have it. But I don't really want to have ownership of the document. That's theirs now. Let them work with it. Let them have all the controls. So you have an ability to do that without creating a new document. All right? Questions? Anything else? So there are a couple of other things, and I don't think I'm going to have much time to do Google Forms. I'll try to do maybe a couple of minutes, but I do want to show you one more thing. So this is only unique to Google Sheets. There's no equivalence, and you can understand why it wouldn't really be even necessary. All right? I'm trying to see something that would make sense to show you. That wasn't it. That'll work. Okay. So they said this is only in Google Sheets, and it's new. So you now have an ability within Google Sheets to look at all of the changes only of one cell. So I still have all of the edit changes up top and versions and all of that. But maybe I want to be able to be a little more granular and look actually at the calculations that were done on a particular cell. Because having the version means I still have to hunt around to figure out what's going on. I'm getting the equivalent of a rolling ball. So hold on. Let's see if I can open it up again. I'm just waiting for it to load. Okay. So I can go into a particular cell, and as you see, it says new, and show the edit history. So all the changes that were made, and I purposely played with it before, all the changes that were made to that number and when. So you, in effect, have a version history for every single cell. So I may not necessarily have to, if I want to like really look at what was going on with a particular calculation there and whether or not we want to go back, I can actually do that. And that's only within the last month that they added that. Okay? All right. So how are we doing so far? All right. How about we take a real quick look, like a 10-minute look at Google Forms? All right? So I don't think I did this with you. If I did, stop me. Did I ask you how you take telephone messages? I don't think I did this. I do so many groups I can't keep track. All right? Did I ask you how you took oh, I did. Okay, so I don't want to do that with you. All right. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to, what I was going to show you is how it ports, okay, into Google Sheets. I'm not going to do that. Okay? I'll spend the 10 minutes, I'll show you something else. Okay. Did I show you all the kind of questions you can do in Google Forms? I don't think I did that. So we're going to look at the mishmash of questions that are available, question types, okay, in Google Forms. All right. So there are all these different types of questions. So some of them are so obvious I don't need to do anything on them. What's short answer? It's one line. Okay? What's paragraph? Multiple lines. Okay? So now let's go to multiple choice. Okay? So here's a, here's a multiple choice question. Be good if I could type. What's your favorite food? Okay. So what's your favorite, ethnic food? Okay. So I can do, Chinese, Italian. And that's going to look like this. Notice the circles. Circles indicate multiple choice. In a multiple choice question, you can only choose one. That's key. I'm going to show you the same question again. I'm not going to do any retyping. In multiple choice, well, one more thing. In multiple choice, you can have an other. So I can have an other with a line, okay? Indian. And that then can get submitted. Okay. So this is really, literally the same question. Okay? Drop down. So I'll just show you what that looks like. Looks the same, except it has a drop down. So what's the advantage? Well, if there's 3 items, you may as well do multiple choice. If this were what state where you're born in, and I have 50, you do not want to have 50 in a multiple choice. Drop down makes a lot more sense. So if it's a small list, absolutely multiple choice. If it's a long list, drop down. One difference beyond that, drop down, you cannot have an other with drop down. So if you want to have an other, you gotta use multiple choice. Okay? Third one, checkbox. Same, almost, it's the identical question. Okay. Checkbox, they're square. What's the difference? In a checkbox, you can select more than one. So here, with favorite, but I could say, what are your favorite foods? And you can pick two. So multiple choice, you can only pick one. A checkbox, you can pick two or more. Now, you do have the ability to limit that. You can say only two choices, but let's just assume for basics, if you see a square, it's a checkbox. If you see a circle, it's multiple choice. Okay. So moving right along. Linear scale. I mean, you've all seen questions like this, okay? How was the food? Now here it says 1 to 5, but you're not limited to that. You can have up to 1 to 10, so you can do 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 8. So I'll just do 8. I don't know why. Okay, so 1, awful. 8, wonderful. What does that look like? It looks like that. So how many of you have seen that, like in a hotel survey or something like that? Something that looks like that. Okay. All right. So this one's a quick one. Before I do the grids, file upload. So it even gives you a warning, because I warn you about this. You got to be careful with this one. So this allows people to upload a file. So the first bit of advice, I would never allow this for anybody outside. If we're going to use this at all, it's going to be internal, okay? Because I'm concerned about viruses or malicious stuff, because you're literally letting somebody put a document into your drive, okay? So I don't recommend it. So it even gives you a warning. So I'm going to say continue and just show you what your choices are here. So I can limit it to 1, and I can limit it to a particular type. So I might say you can only do a Google Doc or a PDF or a spreadsheet. So again, theoretically, maybe people put in their, requests for days off, or they submit their grades and they scan them. So then instead of them sending me an attachment, I can have them upload them. They will create a document they will create a folder automatically in your documents in your drive named after the form. So don't have it be untitled form. Okay. That's what it's going to do. And then at that point, you can put it wherever you want. And you can also limit how big. But again, don't recommend doing it unless it's internal. And that's recent. They only added that in about 6 months ago. All right, so let's look at another one. So how is a food works fine for this? Okay, the most common one I get with this is like you see hotels. So it would be, how is the breakfast food? Okay, so here I can be more granular, okay? Okay? And then here, I might have the food items, okay? I don't know if you consider coffee food, but, coffee and tea. Okay? I don't know. That's enough. All right? So let's take a look, just so you can see what it looks like. So how many of you have seen something like this? Also in the survey. Okay? If you lose the screen, I'd recommend you log in and log out. Usually that will fix it. Okay? So notice they're what? They're circles. So what does circle mean? You can only select one of them, which of course makes logical sense here. When I mean one, you can only select one per row. Right? Because it can't be both great and fair. So one that they added recently, and it makes absolutely no sense for this question, is a checkbox grid. So it looks the same, but it would allow you to pick more than one. So of course, in this question, that makes no sense. But let me just modify the question a way that it might, just to see an example, okay? And you could debate whether you wanted to do the horizontal or the vertical. I might do it the other way around, but anyway. Actually, I would, okay? So I'm going to do Monday. I'm just going to do 3 days. And the question is, what times are you available? Like for appointments. And again, I could do much more, but I'll just give you, 3, okay? Okay, so let's take a look at that. So that would look like that. Now, again, I could have transposed. I think that's the way I probably would do it. But I could have had the times, And now, okay, here's when I'm available. I'm available Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 to 9. Tuesdays I can only do 9 o'clock. And these I'm available all of them. So the fact that it's asking me my availability, I could pick multiple ones. So it's a checkbox grid because they're square. Okay? There's only one other one, and then, we can call it a day. There's actually 2, but only one of them, I think, makes any sense. Okay? So here, depending on the browser, you can do it in any browser, but you get more goodies if you do it on the Chrome browser. Okay? Which is where I'm at. So if you're not on the Chrome browser, you can enter the date. If you're on the Chrome browser, it'll give you a date picker. But it won't give you a date picker in Internet Explorer. It may work in Firefox, but I know it does not work in Internet Explorer or Safari, which is what I have on my Mac. Okay? So you have to be in the Chrome browser. But if you're not, you could still enter the date. You just would have to manually enter it. Okay. Any questions? I know I did that kind of quick, but I wanted to give you, a good run-through of some of the types of questions and how they work. All right, so we're about 5 after 3. I think it's probably time to call it a day. So I'm going to shut off the recording, and then And as I always do, I'll stay around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions about Google, even outside of what